Alright, so best base locations part 4, I believe. Hexolite and triple bases. So I'm gonna start with the Hexolite bases, and then I've already done a little bit of Hexolite bases in previous videos with the best base locations on Feybreak, so it'll be pretty much the same locations, and some of them will be the same as the previous version with the oil bases, since that is pretty much the best base locations on Feybreak, with Hexolite are the ones with oil. But I'm just gonna show them anyway, since people might not have watched the previous versions. We got the only triple Hexolite base location here, and it also has one oil node. So this is by far the best base location for Hexolite, since it's the only one with 3 and it also has an oil node. So it's right here, next to the Warsec Terra. So overall, it's a good base for just Hexolite. Not super good if you want to build a sort of triple base or double base thing. There is some flat area right next to it, so you could do something like that and use this as like your main base setup. But I'm going to be going into why you would want to do that when I get to the triple base locations part of this video. So this is the main base location for Hexolite. Okay, then we have this base location again. It also has one oil node and then 2 Hexolite nodes. And then it also has the added benefit of having a couple of chromite nodes up here. So you can use the metal detector or smoky to find like here somewhere around 2 of them. And you got a couple of more here up by this oil node. There's one oil and one Hexolite. So this is also a decent location to make like a sort of double or triple base setup. It's pretty flat. You do have this bounty target here as well. You can farm the bounty. Should be decent for this kind of base. It's pretty close to a fast travel location as well, so it's not something that you use to like utilize traveling around the map more. Some base locations, like the one I showed before, are a little bit further from a fast travel. Feybreak is pretty big, so building bases where you don't have a fast travel is something you could do. But overall, this is another one of the good Hexolite base locations. And then this base here, also shown previously, is the second double Hexolite and oil. So that's those 3. It's this one here, and then the triple Hexolite base. They're the ones that have Hexolite and oil. So if you don't care about oil, there are a couple of other locations, but these are the 3 that do have this that you can use. So over here in this corner near the Flares Aqua one, pretty far away from fast travel points, so it's viable as like a travel location. You got the cave here with some smoky mining for chromite. It's viable. You got 2 Hexolites, no oil, so this is one of those no oil locations. There are a couple, I think, that have just double Hexolite and not much else. This is just one that's pretty flat. It has a slight slope in the middle. I've used it as a raid base, but sometimes Xenolord seems to get stuck in this, so I stopped using it for raids. But it's viable as a raid base as well. Not too many enemy pals wandering into the base. This is another decent location. Then the last Hexolite base that I think I'm gonna show is this one here. Just to give an example of one of these double Hexolite bases. It's the first Hexolite base I used just when I got to Feybreak. Just the first one I found that did have double Hex. Not much to say about it. There's a lot of trees that you need to block. It's not super flat. It's just to give an example of like that there are these double Hexolite bases with not much else going on really. So like I tried to build here, but I couldn't fit both Hexolites in the flat location. So there might be a couple of more decent Hexolite locations, but overall you're gonna be wanting to use the ones with oil, probably those 3. If they're taken, you do have this one and this one as a budget option, and then there are probably some other double Hexolite bases as well that you can find. There's a lot of Hexolite spread out on Feybreak, so if you do find something where you can fit both in, I think I found some more that, but they weren't flat at all. They were like very hilly, so not super good. This one is decently flat if you do want to build something here. Now I'm going to be moving on to the triple base locations. Okay, it's a little bit about the so-called triple bases. It's something left over, like the name triple base location, from when we only had 3 bases in the start of Palworld. it was pretty common to just build your 3 bases close to each other. And the reason for that was the issue with transporting. So I think a lot of people have noticed that once you leave the base, like you have your base, you travel away somewhere, you come back, and nothing has been transported. You'll find, like if you have ranch bases going, you'll find piles of eggs and stuff like that. Your stone pits or your mining pits will be full to 9,999. Like transport just isn't working. And that issue remains. I think it has been improved a little bit, but the issue still remains that stuff just doesn't get transported properly when you're not inside your base. So what a lot of people just ended up doing is building their 3 bases. Back then we only had 3 bases really close together. You would probably do, like my first triple base was at this 10 ore location here. So I had my ore here, then I built the second base here for like breeding, and then the food base here. So once you're like hatching eggs and stuff, or you're doing stuff in your main base, like the transport works as it should. As soon as you left the base and came back, you'd find that no food had been produced and all the ore was lying on the ground. So it's just a way to reduce the issue of transporting. And that, since that issue remains, people are still doing this. You'll see I have 5 bases set up here. So it's just when I'm hatching eggs, transport will still work in the ranch base, and then the main base over here. A little bit chaotic because I'm usually just throwing stuff out to do tests and stuff like that, but it's mostly, I'm in the breeding bases. I have the skill fruit base over there. So it's just so transport works like it should due to this render distance issue. But then something else that was added in Feybreak were these expedition buildings. So if you do want to run, like you're probably gonna be, let's say on default settings, having 4 bases up and running. You're probably gonna want a location with, like, you got your oil and your hexolite, because that's something that you can't really automate in the base with mining pits. And then you want your expedition stations close together just so that you can spam them. Like every 6 minutes, something like that, I fly between these 5 if I'm grinding something like large pal souls or chromite from the expedition stations. And if I had to fast travel, like if I had my 1 base here and then 1 base over here and 1 base over here, if I had to fast travel, it would take a lot longer to do the expedition grinding. Like I think I timed it once and it took around 45 seconds to do all these 5 expedition stations. And if I was adding fast travel in between those, I would probably just be running in a loop between 5 bases with a loading screen in between. There's 2 reasons now. It's the render transporting issue, and it's also just to make this expedition farming a little bit easier. So that's like the background on why you use a triple base, or nowadays probably a quadruple base. Or when you're leveling and you only have 3 bases, it's pretty common to have, like, you would have your main base, you would have your breeding base, and then somewhere on the map you would have your ore outpost that you then move to, like coal outpost that then gets moved to sulfur and then to quartz. Like that's pretty common as well, to just have your breeding base nearby, because you do spend quite a bit of time in the breeding base. Just you're hatching the eggs, you're condensing, you're checking the passives and all that stuff, and while you're doing that you just want transport to work as it should. So that's a little bit of the background for triple bases. So it's just an old name. You can call them quad bases or duo bases or whatever. I'm not sure. I have 5 bases now, but that's just because I can't fit all my pals in my pal box anymore. I think most of the breeding farms are empty nowadays. And then I just put a bunch of like chickpeas and musarinas in the ranch base because I'm too lazy to buy stuff. So going on to the base locations themselves. Okay, so for the base locations themselves, going back to this little history lesson, if you're still mining ore naturally, you would probably have it like this location here, and then your second base here, and the third base somewhere around the map, or just your third base here as well. It depends a little bit. Since Feybreak was added, we did get some more mining sites, so now we have, you don't need to build your quartz base up here somewhere. You can just build a quartz mine. So mostly, you either want to look for a flat area, like here, lots of flat locations for a lot of bases. So then you're looking at the early game islands. So you got this island here, Forgotten Island, you got Icewind Island. I've seen a lot of different setups for people doing 2 to even 10 bases. just spamming them out. You need to clear quite a bit of trees here. That's why I use this side. This side is also pretty common. Seen some like 8 base build here. There's a lot of videos on YouTube of people doing mass bases around this area. So really, any of these starting islands will have these big flat areas where you can build your stuff. Over here as well, big flat areas. Maybe a little bit trickier here. You can use the terrain to build something cool here. But as you go into the higher level areas, you stop getting these big flat areas the same way. It becomes a little bit harder to do it, like the dunes. And also before, we didn't have the skill fruit plantations. So it's pretty common to build like a base that covered a skill fruit tree, so you would get those collected automatically. That's not an issue anymore. As long as you have one fruit, you get infinite fruits with the skill fruit plantations. There's no reason to do that anymore, really. So generally, either when you're leveling, you're going to be wanting to look for these. Like this is also one that I've used before, this triple setup here, or using this setup. So you want them to be close enough that you don't go outside of render distance, but at the same time, you probably want, if you're using all your bases, like if you're using default settings, just 4 bases, you want to cover a little bit of more resources with oil and hexolite. So I'm going to be moving on to some of those locations. Okay, so before moving on to the hexolite bases, I'm just going to show some of these locations, what they look like. Here, big flat area, but a lot of trees that you will need to clear out and then build foundations so that they don't respawn again. Same thing up here, like big flat area, you can get your bases up and running, but you do need to cover a lot of trees. As mentioned, that's why I use this location over here. Not so many trees that need to be covered, but you probably need to use either like the small flower pots to cover like single trees you want to keep from growing up, or mass building foundations to cover the entire flat area. Then we got Forgotten Island over here. So again, you can see we got these huge flat areas. So it's really just pick your spot and start building bases close to each other. If you do want to start doing it while leveling, a lot of people like to use this location. This one here. You build your base and then you can build like these multi-plateau bases with ramps going up and down. You do get like 2 ore nodes, but now we got the ore mining site, so it's not super important anymore. So this is another one of those locations. But really anywhere on these 2 islands is fine. You can use the terrain as much as you want. Then there was this location near German Tide Alpha Boss here, next to the Investigator's Fork travel spot. This is one I used during the pre-Sakurajima era. I had one base here for breeding, the main base here, and then a legendary sphere factory up here. So that worked out fine as well. I've also moved it so I had base there, base here, and a breeding base over here instead. That also worked fine. You just need to clear out the camp, build a PAL box, and it will eventually despawn. As soon as you destroy your PAL box again, the camp respawns. So you just need to clear out the camp and wait a while. Not sure entirely how long, but you can clear it out. And then you got this location here, which is quite nice. I did try some of these other locations, but I found that these areas were a little bit too small. But really, if you don't mind it, you can use these kind of areas as well. They're fine. Then got this one here as well. Like, I think you're getting the point with these locations. Just build your bases wherever you like. Try to use flat areas, or if you want to use some of the terrain, like you can do some cool stuff with the terrain. If you don't mind like the pathing issues that it brings. Those are just some regular, just any of these starting islands is fine for doing that kind of triple base setup. I'm just gonna show some quick ones on Feybreak as well. Okay, so I'm on the save that I'm using to do all the tower bosses at their respective levels to make those guides. It's just something I really mocked up quickly. It's not like a main kind of thing. But here you can see we got these 2 hexolites. They weren't really visible in the hexolite part of the video. But this is another spot that you can use. So I've set up a double base here. You get the hexolite, and eventually the oil. I'm not level 50 yet. But there's actually no enemy pals here. So if you want to set up a base here, you can go here like already at level 10. Or when is the Serpent? So yeah, level 10, you can get the Serpent Saddle. You can take the long swim. Guess you would catch the Serpent here. Catch the Serpent. And then swim down, around, or above. Down if you want to check for more of the eggs on the way, I guess. But yeah, you can go here at level 10, set up your first base. I don't think the mining level matters for Hexolite. You can mine it with level 1. They might have changed it, but before you can mine it with any kind of mining pile. So you set up your base here at any time really. You start mining Hexolite, so by the time you do need to use Hexolite, you already got some. And you can eventually build your oil extractors once you do get to that level. And then you get your second base. I built mine here just because there's an egg spawn there. There's also a Hexolite here that's not visible right now. And there's a junk pile. So if you do this at an early level, you do end up getting quite a lot of good stuff. So you get your Hexolite, 2 Hexolites, and then the area itself is pretty flat. I built my pal box quite far into the wall just to get that egg spawn there. You don't have to do that. You can build your pal box a little bit further out and then use a combination of foundations and roofs to go out over the water a bit further. And then you would build your third base. Oh, the stamina. I miss my Xenon Lord when I'm on this save. But then you can build your third base over here by this hill. Not super flat, but I think you'll be fine with this little hill. So this is another one of those like nice triple spot locations that actually gives you something. The ones I showed before, they're mainly because of how easy it is to build there, or if you're playing with like 10 bases in the settings or something. But if you are using the default save, you'll probably build like the first base, the breeding base or ranch base or whatever you want here, because you get the 3 Hexolite nodes. And then I think I got my, right now I got my quartz base going with my third base. And then I will eventually unlock the 4th base, which I probably will build just here. And put some random stuff in that one as well. So that's like one of these locations. I did show, I haven't exported yet, but I'll go back to the main save and show it instead of just talking about it. Okay, so it's back to this location again. Just because you got this oil and the Hexolite, then a pretty flat area here where you can also get some Hexolite and oil. It's another one of those, like, it's semi-viable. I think the one down here is probably better for building a eventual triple base. This one, it will be fine as well as an alternative to it. So you can probably find like other areas, and it depends a little bit. Like, you don't have to be too picky when it comes to doing these like 2, 3, 4, or up to 10 base locations. You can do it here. It depends on how much flat area you want really, and what kind of resources you want in the base. So now with the skill fruit plantations and all the mining sites that we have, the only things you can't automate in a base is the Hexolite and the oil. Like, you need to build your bases at specific locations for that. So that's why these Feybreak locations are pretty nice. And this one, as mentioned, you can just go here at level 10 and then have mining outposts for the other stuff until you unlock the mining sites spread around the map. So that's like it for the triple and quad based location thing. You can build them anywhere you like really. It's mainly the reason for it, like the render distance and having easier expedition farming, stuff like that. So for now, thanks for watching.